Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so right now, at this exact moment, you are performing a fascinating, completely unnatural act. You're reading, and the hidden mechanics behind what your brain is doing to make this happen are truly mind-blowing. Just think about the number 1.3 million for a second. That staggering figure is the word count of Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, which is widely considered the world's longest novel. And get this, it features a single sentence with over 900 words. I mean, just imagine the sheer cognitive horsepower required to process that. Which kind of makes you wonder, right? How does our brain even handle that much text? Is reading just this innate, natural human ability that we're simply born with, sort of like how we naturally learn to speak? Section 1. The reading myth. So, we tend to just assume that written language is processed exactly like spoken language, and that we basically arrive in this world fully ready to read. But here's the thing. For an ability to be truly natural, our brains would literally have to be hardwired for it straight from birth. Exactly like how we're born with the neural networks that allow our eyes to see light or our vocal cords to produce sound. If reading were actually natural, those networks would already be in place on day one. But author Marianne Wolf completely shatters that assumption. She states it flatly, saying it isn't natural at all. While we definitely have those built-in networks for sight and sound, babies are definitively not born with the pathways needed to read. They simply do not exist yet. Section 2. Hacking the brain. So, according to psychologist and neuroscientist Rebecca Gottlieb, this all comes down to our evolutionary timeline. We just haven't had enough time as a species to evolve for this. Because reading is such a remarkably new invention for humanity, our brains completely lack a dedicated region for it. We don't have a specialized, ready-to-go reading center waiting for us when we're born. So, to solve this massive architectural problem, the brain pulls off a brilliant biological hack. It essentially co-opts or hijacks other neural networks that evolution originally designed for completely different survival tasks. To build a reading network from scratch, the brain patches together systems responsible for our vision, auditory processing, spoken language, attention, and even our emotions. It forces all these different parts to work together as one cohesive reading machine. Section 3, a whole brain process. By pulling from so many distinct, specialized regions, learning to read turns into this incredibly intense, whole brain event. Processing words demands massive coordination. It literally lights up activation centers across all 4 lobes of the cortex. It's literally a whole brain workout just to get through a single paragraph of text. And all this unnatural, heavy cognitive lifting physically alters a person's brain. Developing a reading brain changes your brain's activity, its physical structure, and its connectivity compared to someone who hasn't learned to read. Section 4. How language shapes circuits. Now, what is absolutely incredible here is that the specific written language you learn literally dictates how your brain is shaped. Scientists actually observed a stunning real-world example of this. They looked at a bilingual man who was completely fluent in reading and speaking, both Chinese and English. But then, unfortunately, he suffered a stroke in specific parts of his brain. And here is the mind-blowing part. The stroke completely eradicated his ability to read Chinese, but it left his ability to read English completely intact. Like, how is it biologically possible to lose one written language but perfectly keep another? Well, it all comes down to your brain's circuitry. To understand this, we have to realize that when we learn to read, the brain custom builds a network from scratch to reflect the highly specific, unique requirements of that exact language. Research shows that learning to read an alphabet-based system like English requires one set of connections, while symbol-based characters like Chinese activate entirely different regions of the brain. The brain had literally built 2 distinct, separate reading circuits for this man. Marianne Wolf explains this by pointing to the visual nature of the characters themselves. Chinese characters are beautifully intricate, right? So processing them requires the brain to handle a massive amount of spatial and visual information all at once. Because of this rich visual detail, reading Chinese inevitably demands way more visual memory and visual processing. That means those specific visual areas of the brain must be deeply developed as a core part of the Chinese reading circuit compared to an English one. Section 5. The power of deep reading. All of this brings us to a really profound realization about this whole unnatural, insanely complex brain hacking process we've been talking about. As Rebecca Gottlieb highlights, the power of deep reading is fundamental to our humanity. She says, when we read deeply, we change our brains and we change who we are. Because every single word we process is physically rewiring our neural architecture. So, knowing that the text you process is literally physically shaping your brain's circuitry, how are your own daily reading habits wiring your mind right now? Are you feeding your brain deep, intricate ideas or just quick, fleeting texts? Definitely something to think about the next time you sit down to read. Thanks for joining me for this.